But all of you serve one master, which is the story. Right? Story is reigns supreme, and everything, every decision you make, whether it's the writer's decision or my decision on what the character is wearing or what hairstyle they have or anything at all, right? The look on their eyes, the age they are, their posture, is all subservient to what fulfills the need in the story best, right? And if you can get in tune with the director and his team, get in tune on what you're actually trying to say, you'd be surprised. A lot of it all hits the same, at least the same outer ring of the bullseye, right? Just because you know what to aim at. You're all good storytellers. Most good concept artists are good storytellers. So really, that's what it is. And you just remember that any concept design is a frozen moment of a story. Even if the character's just standing there, they came from somewhere and they're going to go somewhere. Just like I came in here, I'm sitting in this chair now. But before that, I walked in. I came in from downstairs. I was having a lunch with a bunch of students. This is a PS to the conversations I've already been having downstairs about storytelling. So that all shows. It shows in your posture, your body language, all that kind of stuff. And it's surprisingly magical the way it matches together if you're on the same page. The way to do that, easiest I've found, find a piece of music. Truly. I would ask a lot of directors, what is this film? What would it sound like if it was a song? It doesn't have to be soundtrack from the movie or anything like that. It's just, what is the sound? I asked P.J. Hogan that back on the Peter Pan that he did over in Australia. And he says, well, it's kind of like that, I forget which song it was, a Coldplay song or whatever, but only the beginning. Oh no, It's a Beautiful Day. That's right, the U2 thing. But only the beginning. Because that beginning is hopeful with a little melancholy to it. And then it gets all funny. So just listen to that. So I went to the team. We would play that on a loop over and over and over again. And lo and behold, it just sways the art where it needs to go. So there's a lot of tricks. Like an actor, right? Puts on the hat, little mustache, the cane, the shoes. He's Charlie Chaplin. I mean, he's a little tramp, right? Transformed. So we do the same thing. We look for a thing that brings us into that world, keeps us there. No. 90% of the time, there's no script. Not these days. I'm given a description, or I know they're remaking Jungle Book, and I know Jungle Book. I know the Kipling, and I know the Disney, because I saw the first movie in the theater ever as a kid. And the director will say, having this slightly different take on it, show me Baloo, show me Mowgli. And off you go, and you have to invent story. You have to invent where we're going. And because it's Jon Favreau, he's a big kid, right? He probably is going to sway a little more to the heart and soul inside the animated thing. So you maybe lean that way, but mostly you reach inside and go, I'm 5 again. I'm in the theater. What is it I love about those characters? And you draw that, right? Because remember, my job is to offer, as a concept artist, and I direct a lot more these days than I concept design and write and do all those kind of things. I do my own books, I do my own movies. But as a concept artist, my job is to offer the banquet. The director's job is to come up and choose. And it's thank you yes, or it's thank you no, right? So it fits beautifully, It's not adversarial, at least on the shows I've worked on, it's never adversarial with the director. They're as much a collaborator as you are. It's just their job to say yes or no. It's funny about that because a lot of people, I don't know why, in Australia too, I was asked, what are my 5 desert island films? And I thought, that's easy. So I said I would do it. Took me a friggin' whole year of it's this one and this one and this one, and then all these other ones going, but what about me? You love me. And so every time I scoop some up, other children fall out of your fingers, and it was awful. It was awful. And finally I had to just put some criteria, right? No, I really am on a desert island, really, and somehow magically there's electricity, and I can watch something. What would I really watch if that's the only thing I'm going to see for the rest of my life? Well, that's different than the 5 worthiest films or the 5 best films. It's the ones you really do watch over and over again. So asking for my favorite moments in films and so on, everything. They're all kids. I'm a little different than most concept artists and writers and directors and so on, maybe. I only take on projects that I feel have something for me and are worthy to make, right? It's like being an actor, and sometimes it's too perfect. I don't take it because it's perfect, because it's done. I just want to be an audience. But if there's a hole there, if they didn't quite get that, or if they're not leaning this way, and that would be a great way to go, I'll join so I can offer that to the production. And if I'm a director, It's the same with any director picking a project. You want to find something that you can bring to it, bring your voice to it, which means they're all your kids. And how can you pick your kids? You know, I love them all. If you just want a random, wonderful moment, name any film I worked on. Interview with the Vampire. You know, I was just a storyboard artist, but Digital Domain had only just started. Scott Ross and a few other employees, very few other employees are there, and Neil Jordan calls and, do you have a storyboard artist? Scott looks at me, and I go, sure, yeah. And I'm not an employee or anything, and Scott goes, yes, we have the best. We have Iain McCaig here. I'll send him over. So I fly to Ireland with Stan Winston, who's going to do the effects, and first class. First time I've ever flown first class. We're going off to Ireland, and wow, it's spacious there. You know, crazy extras and stuff. And then we go to Neil's house to work. First time I gone to a director's home, but not the last. And they're all different. They're all unusual. Love Neil. I've always loved his work. Crying Game's the hands down best written script I've ever seen. I really love the film, but the script is music. Same with Mona Lisa. The film itself, just wonderful. So now I get to sit with this man who did these films I love, and we're going to do an interview with a vampire. How fun is that? But he smokes all the time, and I don't. And Stan smokes all the time. And I'm drawing my boards, you know, as they're speaking, and they're both leaning in over either shoulder, and clouds of smoke are going everywhere. And it's the scene where Lewis is kissing the prostitute that he's brought back, right? And he meant to bring her back to feed off of, but he's trying not to be a vampire. So there she's beautiful, and instead he goes to kiss her, and as he kisses her, you see his teeth sink into her tongue as he starts to drain the blood out of her. And I just remember Neil on this side going, closer, closer, and Stan, more tongue, more tongue. Like, oh, leave me alone. So, you know, it's all sorts of good stuff like that. On any film, there are always those wonderful moments and things, you know. Daniel Day-Lewis was going to be Lestat back then. I think he had just gotten out of the taxi that I got into to go to Neil's house. So I like to put the face of the characters on who they're going to play, and so every storyboard has Daniel Day-Lewis as Lestat. Jeez, is that fun? What a powerful, I mean, Tom Cruise did a great job, but what a powerful actor Daniel Day-Lewis is, right? And he would have kicked that out of the park. So they've all got stories like that, every single one. Rockwell did that too. He said, I have a terrible memory, but I remember when I look at my paintings, what the sound was, who was in the room, who was in my life, what was happening in my life. He says, so I'm going to write this autobiography of my paintings, and I'll tell you what happened to me looking at them. So he does. He goes through and he tells the history of his life, but it's through each of the images that he created. Some come like that. You know, it's a frozen piece of history for me in every character in every film I work on. Be just this little small, tiny piece of what I loved, and that's not enough to fulfill me. So I wrote stories. I've written over 10 screenplays. I've sold them all. I've had one produced. I have one in production now. I just sold one that we can't talk about, you know. So I never looked at it as working up a ladder. It was always, I tell stories, the end, right? I'll tell this little piece on this project, but I'll go and I'll write this one over here. And it's actually books I love most, not film. Film's great, but books are awesome, right? And I think it's because you have these words that are like little dots, and they stay unconnected until you, the reader, come and connect them. And you connect it with your imagination, which means you half wrote it. So that gives that book an immense power to you. It's personal to you. It's special to you. You had to give energy and effort to make it real. So for me, there's nothing better than that, except for maybe theater, where I do a bunch of flat things behind me, or maybe just a lectern and a plant pot on it, and you have to imagine the Roman Empire or whatever it happens to be. So the audience has to contribute massively to that too. And it's fantastic. I think even one step above that, radio plays. Radio plays. You can have a cast of thousands, unlimited special effects, whatever you can conjure up with words and sound effects. So I've never tried to go through that ladder. I do direct. I enjoy that, but I guess I enjoy most of all writing and drawing the stuff. As a storyboard artist, you're kind of the director, producer, production designer, costume designer, everything all in one. It's why it's really, really fun, right? Because your hands on it all. It's frustrating to me directing live action, and for a while, it's like, what do you do with the actors? Oh, no, it's not that, it's meant to be this. And until I learned that, no, it's like watercolor. Get over it, let go. Let the paint do the work. And when it does something you didn't want, say thank you and decide, does it fit? And if it doesn't, it's thank you no, or it's thank you yes. I think we all kind of live in worlds we make up and constantly make up throughout our lives. I was saying this at some of the talks this time. I think from the moment you're born, you start to create a story of who you are and who you want to be, right? What you want to do in life, what your values are, your morals and ethics, who your friends are going to be, which girl you're going to go out with, all this stuff. And then you conspire the whole of your life to make that true, right? And as you grow up and as you learn new things, or better yet, just like in the recent election, somebody comes along with an equally strong story, and it both lies there like a train wreck. And it leaves us shaken because your story, you remembered it now, you made it up. It's not real. And so we quickly rewrite. We quickly take into account this new information, and what does that mean? And you find a new version of yourself. And if you know what a story is, if you know how to tell a story, if you know what makes a good hero and a good villain, and what makes conflict and choices that uplift and choices that pull you down, it allows you to rewrite your own story in a really positive way, right? In a way that makes you the hero, opens up the world for you, even while you know you made it up. It's like they said in The Little Prince, what's real is what you give meaning to. It's what you make real, right? And it doesn't matter that it was written or that you wrote it. So there you are. That's what was your question? I'm not sure even if there is an abstract reality. Who knows if there is? I think we truly do see we see what we are, not what is. But I can try to show you, and you can try to show me too. Showing me those photographs, like I had a picture of my head of that frozen place you were at. It didn't match that at all. And I get it every time I talk on the telephone too. It's like somebody calls me, and I know from the sound of that voice, I know exactly what you look like, and I am always wrong. And there's this big graveyard of people that I imagined that don't exist anymore, right? So I think it's that sharing that's so damn fun, right? And really, all of this is just about perspective, right? Points of view and stuff. Looking through each other's eyes, giving us that opportunity. It's the joy of being an artist, isn't it? That's a really good question, actually. So you know the answer already, which is there's no one way at all of doing anything, but especially art, right? The analogy probably would be poetry. So remember when you're in school and they said, okay, kids, if you want to make a poem, let's try rhyming line 1 with line 3 and line 2 with line 4. And that didn't hold you back. You could be pretty wild and crazy with that kind of rhyme scheme, but then you learn about sonnets, like what? Haikus, oh, those are awesome. And then free verse, a little scary, but it comes out cool too, so if you do it right. And you realize, now there's unlimited ways to do the same thing. So for me in story, it's not to say that I do unlimited ways. I actually usually use the same way. I use that line 1 and line 3 and line 2 and line 4. That's called the 3-act structure. And for me, it has a very definite form. I ask the same questions, no matter what the story is. In fact, for bad films, I put them through that process to see where did they mess up. And it's simply this. You got to know what genre it is. So when they walk in the theater or pick up the book, they know they got the right thing. So you can fake them out a bit, right? It's a horror story about a beach party. Bunch of people having fun on the beach. Oh, 2 of them are going to make out. It's like, I'm in the wrong theater. Oh no, they're in the water. And then she's eaten horribly for the next, 10, 15 minutes. It's just awful. And you realize, oh, good, I'm in the right theater. As opposed to, I don't know, something that made you laugh outrageously in the first few seconds and you can relax knowing it's a comedy. Or a giant ship comes in overhead and you know it's going to be science fiction, right? So you've got to know what genre, about who. And the problem with a lot of films is they're not real clear on who it is about and what they want with their heart and soul and why you want them to get it, right? And once you know that, you got to train. And it's like ready to go down that track. And you just load up these obstacles in front. So there is no chance in hell it's getting down that track. And the biggest obstacle of all is inside the train. It's always that inner obstacle that is really the magic trick of what stories is about, right? So you put that all up front, And the story starts when you know that, yes, there's no way it's going to get down the track. But today, ladies and gentlemen, today only, there's this crazy plan. It's like a slingshot, pulling it back, aiming over the wall really high. And this crazy plan is what lets it go. And you watch it try to get over that wall. It's never going to make it. You know it's not going to make it. Oh my God, it's going to make it. Holy shit, it's making it. Right? That's the joy of Act 2, watching the crazy plan in action. And then it succeeds, usually. And that's the highest high. By God, they went to bed. Something great happened. He saved the princess. Right after that's the lowest low. He wakes up in the morning and has to confess he's married. Or, Luke realizes there's a tracking device to board and he's pulling the villains to the one place the princess was going to give her life to protect. So, it's the lowest low. And at that point, the rabbit comes out of the hat, which was that inner obstacle. Because the inner obstacle is a manifestation, usually, of what the character needs, not what they want, right? And now at the bottom, usually with a gift they found on the way they didn't expect, like love or a lightsaber or a destiny or whatever, they make a new plan based on that need, not that want. And then after that, kill him, let him live, whatever, right? It'll either be a happy ending or a sad ending. We just love that moment of epiphany where a person realizes what they have to do. When Hamlet realizes he's a little whiny procrastinator and he actually better kill somebody, right? Yeah, that moment, aha, is great. The fact that he's one of the dead bodies at the end doesn't matter. So I put a lot of my stories through that pattern because it's a very recognizable form. A lot of the movies that I write are meant for a mainstream audience to recognize that thing. When I write a book, I wrote Shadowline, which it looks like an art book, but it's a story, And I did that by making a house. Every chapter was a room. Something happens in that room. When you're done, you leave out and you get out the back door. That's another story form, right? You go in a house. Maybe you don't want to go in the house. But once you're in there, you got to end up not wanting to leave or running for the back door, right? And something happens where you're either outside and you can't go back or you can't get out. That's another story form too. There's a lot of them. I love them all. They're good. And I think that's the goal of my life now, is to not stop, not rest on my laurels, not just take that 3-act structure as the only kind of thing. Write a tragedy, which is a 3-act structure in the first half, but with a fatal flaw, and then the character realizes there's something inside them that can't let them live happily ever after. And slowly it eats them alive for 2 acts. Earlier films were pulling from stage playwrights and novelists and things like that. And, even if the filmmaking has gotten a lot more sophisticated, the storytelling hasn't necessarily. Those old stories, they were not afraid to do anything. Hurt characters, let heroes fail. I mean, truly, To Kill a Mockingbird, Atticus does not save that guy. In the courtroom scene, he fails, right? And yet to allow that to happen to a hero, to watch him deal with failure and stuff, awesome. It is. So to bring that courage back into storytelling, I'd love to do that. Agreed. You also don't see people a little more afraid to bring funny and uplifting into a heavy film. To Kill a Mockingbird has a lot of things that make you laugh or smile because you remember being that kind of kid or that kind of thing happening. Now it's a little too on the nose sometimes. But again, now it is in mainstream films. Independent films? Hell no, there's some awesome independent films. Now you watch what happens to them as a result of having taken that step, right? Or, someone who is a loser, never ever succeeds at anything, suddenly wins. Doesn't mean they become a winner, but that one time they won. It's always watching people step out of their comfort zones, right? Which is a secret in a lot of directing as well, I think, and artists. And any artistic endeavor, we like our comfort zones. Like sitting on our chairs, we're comfortable and stuff. Nah, play it standing up, right? It's a love scene. Don't let them get close. Now say I love you. Put one on opposite ends of the train station. Say I love you, right? So much more power there because every volume, every note, every second of it counts, right? Especially if one's being taken off to a concentration camp and the other one has to flee for the border. Something that kicks it out of just I love you. I'm executive producing a big animated film. It's completely financed by a gentleman from China. It's a company called Aquaman. So a gentleman from Korea who is a filmmaker and one from China who is not yet, but spent about 3 years on that now, helping mentor them to where they need to be. And very, very proud. Barry Cook, director, creator of Mulan, is co-executive producer on that. We're both working very hard. It's called Kong. You can see it in the theaters in another couple of years, probably. Let's see what else. I'm illustrating Frankenstein, which I think I was doing last time I talked to you. I wanted a personal project that had nothing to do with deadlines or money or anything like that. So I love Frankenstein. It's my favorite book. And I wanted to illustrate it my way because nobody's done. Bernie Wrightson did an awesome version, but he did it his way and made it this epic Victorian thing. Frankenstein's set in 1790. It's not Victorian at all. Victor Frankenstein's 19 years old when he builds the monster, and he's not a doctor. He's a medical student, and he builds it in a university in a little attic room, right? He builds the bride up in Scotland in a little croft. So even just to do the book like she wrote it, like 18-year-old Mary Shelley wrote it, wow, what fun would that be, right? Her monster is not this brute. He is a brute, but he's not this shuffling monster. He's really articulate. He's lightning fast. He can scale the sides of mountains and things. So to show a monster like that, yeah, that's kind of fun. So I started illustrating it and with a camera on me because I'm doing this for schoolism as a workshop too on how to illustrate and how to copyright text. And unfortunately, it started taking a long time because I needed the text, so I had to read it. Then I discovered there's 3 versions of Frankenstein. She rewrote it twice in her life. So I read all 3 back to back, and then I realize at the end of the same book 3 times, there's bits here I really don't want to illustrate. Mostly Victor Frankenstein. He's just this whiny kid. I just want to tell the story of the monster. So I went back and I cut out all the things that Victor was in and just left the monster. But now you get these huge gaps, right? So I had to write what the monster was doing during those times, and it didn't match, so I rewrote the other ones. And before you know it, I rewrote Frankenstein. Anyway, so I am slowly now illustrating that version of the text with a camera on me, and then I'll share that with everybody in a couple of years when it's ready.